Hey, what's up, good people? Welcome to another episode of Pwned. I teased you guys about a couple of videos that I was going to make, and this is not one of them. I'm sorry guys, thank you for your patience. Anyway, this video is all about the variant, also known as the V by Swin. This is unfortunately not my blaster. This belongs to Enoch. Yes, you guys have not heard Enoch's name in a little while, but yes, this belongs to Enoch. Thank you, Enoch, for sending this my way and letting me spend some time with this to check it out, to understand it, take it apart, take a good look at it so that I could understand the system, formulate my thoughts, and basically blessing me with the opportunity to review the V by Swin. And all in all, I will say that it is a very good blaster, but it is not without its own quirks. And to start things off, I'd like to speak about the price point because this will kind of round everything up at the end of the video. So the price point for this is going to be about 1200 Singapore dollars. That will put it at roughly about the $900 price range. You're thinking, why is it so expensive? Well, basically everything is metal, or almost everything is full CNC'd aluminum, with the exception of the rails up here, as well as the scar barrel, this stock attachment. I don't believe this comes with the variant. Also the mag release lever, as well as an end cap for the plunger tube. As far as I can recall, those are the parts that are not made in metal. Last but not least, this orange Seymour red dot sight is Enoch's red dot sight, and he sent the blaster to me this way. So I believe he enjoys this sort of aesthetic to the blaster, and I'm going to respect that because this is his blaster anyway. So I'm going to leave it on right here. So enjoy the blaster this way. This one is the variant in orange. Now please pardon me, I might interchange between calling this the V or the variant. It's just whatever comes to mind, I'll just call it that. But yeah, this is the variant, everyone. Like I mentioned, I spent some time with this. Actually, I spent a good month with this. So yeah, thank you, Enoch, for allowing me to spend 1 month with your blaster. I believe Enoch didn't even spend much time with it. He just immediately shipped it over to me. So thank you. I really appreciate it. I asked for his permission to disassemble every single thing so I could take a really close look at it. And I must say that I think that the build construction is really solid, but I'm gonna say that you hear this rattling sound? We'll talk about that in a while. So let's talk about the aesthetics of the blaster. And first of all, I regret wearing a black t-shirt because the entire grip area or the Magwell area is all in black, so it might blend in. Hopefully I can kind of edit that in post, but let's just see how that goes. But if it blends in, then that's completely my fault. I apologize, guys. So aesthetics wise, this thing looks like a Vector. It's like a Vector style blaster, but the internals wise is very much like an expanded plunger tube retaliator. It's got a pump grip, and this pump grip honestly is very comfortable and might be one of the best applications and executions of a pump grip on a blaster that I've handled so far. Now let's start from the front going to the back. I don't know why I said that, but let's start from the front. So first of all is a scar barrel. This is a Swin 11-string scar barrel, and this is attached via friction to a Swin barrel. Now this Swin barrel is slightly different. Generally in Singapore we hold high regard for Swin barrels, but this one is kind of proprietary in a way, and you guys can tell why because, well, simply I'm unscrewing this. So it is threaded at the back, and you could see that it says 13270. Now I have no idea if 13270 is the measurements of this barrel, because I really don't think so. I think that's a serialization of, you know, this particular Swin V. So this screws back into place, and yeah, I may be completely wrong here, but I'm inclined to believe that this is a proprietary barrel. But yeah, this is Swin's 11-string scar with a Swin barrel, and the barrel here is anodized in a gold, well, not really gold, more like a champagne kind of color, so champagne goldish. And then starting from the front here, you have the pump grip, and like I said, one of the best applications and executions of a pump grip that I've handled so far. Then we've got the full aluminum body, and this is going to be the top part of the body, right? It's two sides, right, basically. And then we have the top rail that can be detached, and this top rail is a worker top rail, so it's one of those, I think it's POM. I think this material here is POM. But yeah, it's a worker Picatinny rail that you can just kind of screw in or unscrew and just slide it off. And then the bottom here, the Magwell as well as the grip, this area is kind of like its own separate part. The orange part or the main body clamps onto this area over here. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. And then next, you have the plunger tube area, and on one side it says variant, on the other it says Swin Nerf. So this is a semi-exposed plunger tube, which is kind of like, you know how some people like to cut a window slot when you're performing the expanded plunger tube mod on a retaliator shell? Yeah, this kind of reminds me of that. It's got a nice slot cut out here for the pump grip to travel. It's got a little window here. This is kind of like your, I guess your jam door of sorts. And then moving back here, this is the buffer tube. The buffer tube is held in by 2 screws, one on each side. And on the back of the buffer tube is a grub screw, like a large size grub screw. And this is where the spring goes. So you could just unscrew it, remove the spring, and it also comes with 2 nylon spacers. I'll show that to you in a short while, but yeah, basically that's the aesthetics of the blaster. Very sleek, very clean, and it's very, very solidly built. And so now let's kick things off with a firing demo. Yeah, it's a little bit different this time. I'm actually starting this video or this review with a firing demo so that I could kind of talk to you guys about the FPS and then get that out of the way. So here we go. In terms of mag compatibility, this accepts the worker angled mag. I have in hand here an 18 dart worker angled mag, and you're going to have to prime the blaster first before you're able to insert the mag. The ramrod is not in the Vanguard Dogbone style, so yeah, I guess it wasn't licensed by Vanguard. But yeah, the thing here is that the tolerances of this blaster are so tight that you're not able to slam your mag in or yank it out by force. You really have to make sure you prime it. Alright, now just fire off 5 darts because there were 5 darts in this mag. Here we go. So right off the bat, there were no jams, but if you guys realized, pushing the pump grip forward was a little bit slow. And that's because the seal on this thing, I don't really know if it's actually the seal or if it's a dart fit. I really don't think it's the dart fit, but there is some resistance when you're pushing your pump grip forward. And I just realized I didn't even mention what darts I was using. Those are AF Pro darts. Thank you, Vince, for the darts, but yes, AF Pro darts. And so now, if I try to remove the mag, I'm not able to yank it out, even if I pull back on the mag release lever. But once I prime it and I actuate the mag release lever, this is just going to gravity drop. So yeah, let me show that to you guys again. Pretty sick, but I have to say that the mag release lever doesn't actually hold the mag in very securely. Now, of course, you know, light shakes, it wouldn't drop out, but I could easily yank it out. So, you know, I'm led to believe that if your mag was fully loaded and you shook this blaster hard enough, it will drop. The mag will drop. And you know, I don't want to do that because this mag doesn't belong to me. This is Enoch's mag. So yeah, just keep that in mind, guys. And you basically deprime the blaster the standard way. Just hold the pump grip back, squeeze the trigger and slowly release it, and you're done. So this works in a very standard Springer way. Okay, now the firing demo is done. Let me show you guys the little nylon spacers here at the back to kind of compress your spring. So in order to remove this spring, you want to remove the grub screw here, and I do that simply by just twisting it. If you notice, I didn't screw it in all the way. That's because it does have quite a lot of tension since I'm running this currently with 2 spacers. So once I get to the spacers, I'll tell you guys about the FPS that I'm getting, okay? So just bear with me. There we go. This comes right out. And in here is 1, 2 nylon spacers. And the spring that this utilizes is those narrow type springs, just like that. Unfortunately, this is not compatible with your long shot springs of this sort because those springs are really, really long. And I have one of these type of springs. Well, not the exact type, but it's, you know, the narrow type of spring, meant for an expanded tube retaliator, and those are actually slightly shorter than this particular spring here. So this is kind of like an in-between. I don't know the exact specs of this spring, and I don't know the actual spring load. And if you're wondering what the heck this white thing is, it is some E-tape, and I did not put the E-tape there. Apparently, Swin himself put this there. So yeah, it's meant to reduce the rattling sound of the spring. Yeah, that's what I was told. So now that the spring is in there, all you gotta do is just take this grub screw, and you can insert any amount of spacers that you want, but I'm not going to add any right now, and just kind of screw this in. And since there's no spacer, I'm just gonna twist it like that just to make it completely flush. Get your stock of your choice, and then it goes right onto the buffer tube. Now, talking about the stock, this is an adjustable stock with 3 different points. There we go. So yep, 3 different lengths, 1, 2, 3, and closed. So yeah, that's a closed position. So yeah, it's very comfortable when I have it in this closest position. I like this a lot. This is the most comfortable for me. Although I know that there are others who prefer a different length or different distance, just go ahead and adjust it. That is the stock for you. So where do I start, guys? Where do I start? Okay, let me talk about the pump grip first of all, since I mentioned that it was the best, possibly the best pump grip that I've experienced so far. The pump grip, guys, features super tight tolerances. This is all the wobble you're gonna get. That's nuts, guys. This, like, there's no other way to talk it. It's just at that axis here, and it's such a slight amount of wobble. That tolerance is really, really good. And then the priming is really, really smooth. This, it's such a joy. I don't know how Swin did it, but this is really, really good. This is a really satisfying pump grip experience. Like, seriously, guys. My goodness, this is good. Now, I have to say that in Swin's own videos about the V, he primes the blaster just by using his index finger and his thumb. That's quite amazing. I don't know how he does it with such ease. I face a bit of trouble right at the end, so I don't know how he's doing it, but that's really cool when he does it. It's like, it's so effortless the way he does it. I don't know how he's gotten that down, but I definitely need a bit more grip. I don't know. If I grip it like around the edge, on the edge itself, then yeah, that's a lot easier. But the way he does it, it looks so elegant. Like, this is so effortless. But I gotta say that this is a really, really smooth prime. Like, that's that. Next is the Magwell. So you guys know already, I spoke about the Magwell. I spoke about the what is this called again? This is called a ramrod. Sorry guys, I'm not used to calling this part a ramrod. I'm always calling this a breech. So yeah, the ramrod, yeah, the Magwell and the ramrod area. That's a thing I find a little bit cumbersome because you have to make sure you prime it every single time you want to insert or remove a mag. You know, I'm so used to having that new Vanguard dog bone style. So it's quite a shame that this isn't implemented here, or at least tolerances could be a little bit wider in there so that you could basically force your mag in or yank it out. But yeah, it doesn't happen here in this blaster. Next is the mag release lever, and this mag release lever is awesome because it is an ambidextrous mag release lever, which means that you could actuate it this way or on the other side. So it doesn't matter which hand is your master hand, just reach out your index finger and it works. Moving slightly back is the grip itself. This grip is rather blocky, but it's got some nice ergonomics right here. So this allows for a very comfortable grip, especially around your thumb area. I think that's really, really well done. So your thumb just wraps around this groove right here, and on the flip side, it's where your index finger wraps around. So that's really, really comfortable. Now onto the trigger, and I cannot help but to compare this trigger to the balance. Like, the trigger on the balance, the trigger pull was just something that is just, yeah, I can't even explain it. It's the smoothest trigger pull I've ever experienced, and this actually, it's quite close to that. It's not the smoothest, but it is quite close. Now, I'm not so sure how I can describe this, but the trigger is actually quite wobbly. There is quite a good amount of wobble in the trigger, but it is just so smooth, right? I mean, I don't know how Swin does this, but yeah, this is really, really smooth. And then, yeah, basically that's kind of it in terms of the operation of this thing that I want to mention. Now, let's talk about the rattling sound. So, the way the pump grip works is that it's a solid metal bar in the middle, and it's connected to right there. See that? It's connected to the ramrod. So yeah, as I was saying, the priming bar is connected to the ramrod via a pin, and it is that pin that is causing this rattling sound. Because the pin is just, it's a little bit loose, so you're gonna have to kind of like goop it in or something. Just find some temporary way to add a little bit more width to that pin, make it just slightly, just like a hair's width thicker, so that it wouldn't rattle around. That's something that has to be done. But yeah, that sound, man, that's quite obnoxious, right? Okay, all of that out of the way. The construction of this thing is pretty good. Tolerances are actually pretty solid. This orange part here, the top part of the body, clamps onto this black part here. So if you want to open up the blaster or split the shell apart, you want to first remove all the screws on the pump grip, and then all you got to do is just remove every single screw except for these 4, right? Just this area right above the Magwell. Oh yeah, of course you have to remove the top rail as well. Sorry, I forgot to mention that, my bad. But yeah, and if you really want to just remove everything and split everything apart, then yeah, you know, you could remove these 2 screws or these 4 screws, and then you could separate the black area or the Magwell area from the main chassis area. Now, the tolerances of the shells is actually pretty good. One thing that I felt could be improved upon is the tolerances around the area of the buffer tube or the screw ports of the buffer tube. These just don't seem to line up perfectly. Enoch was facing an issue with that, so that is why this area here is a little bit scratched. I guess his screwdriver kind of slipped because yeah, it's not easy to line up this part here. So I kind of wish that tolerances for the buffer tube to the orange part of the body could have been done a little bit better, in my opinion, right? In my opinion. But you know, it all comes together quite nicely at the end of the day. Everything sits rather flush, but I must add that if I were to scrutinize just this screw port, this exact one here, the screw isn't completely straight. So yeah, that's a little bit of a shame. This is where the price point comes into play, guys, because at that price point of 1200 Singapore dollars, I would expect that tolerances across the entire blaster is going to be perfect. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is something that's a little bit more of an OCD thing, and that is the engraving here on the plunger tube. Now, it's just me maybe, but it seems that the engraving here isn't perfectly aligned on both sides. They're not like exactly in the middle of the plunger tube, if you know what I'm talking about. They're slightly lower. Okay, so let me try and explain this in a different way, or try and articulate this in a different way. If you were to align the logo on one side to be perfectly center, and the other side is going to be very low. So yeah, it's just a small thing like that, but in order for you to get it equal, like at equal height, the logos on each side is not going to be perfectly aligned in the middle. So yeah, that's just like my OCD talking, right? The next thing I want to talk about is the actual shell itself. So like I said, the shell is made well, tolerances are good, but in terms of structural integrity, that is something else altogether. This blaster literally is made of 2 halves, right? It's 2 halves. Guys, I think, and I may be completely wrong here, but I think, oh shucks, I can't even remember. I mean, to be honest, I didn't even take notice of this in the first place, but I think that the shells are just mirror images of each other, which means that there's no part of any shell that slips into another. What is that called? Like a stem and a groove, something like that. So yeah, there's no like alignment slots or alignment posts in the shell at all. It's just 2 halves, and everything is aligned just by all these hardware here, like the screws and all that. So that is something that you know, I wish could have been done a little bit better, because it does feel like the parts that are actually holding the blaster halves together is all just purely the hardware. It's these metal screws, these steel screws here that's holding everything together. And yeah, I just wish that there were some parts of one side of the shell going to another, like a male and female kind of thing. Guys, it's late. It's really, really late, and I'm recording this video. I'm really tired, so the words are not coming to me, but I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to say. But yeah, it's just 2 halves, right? It's just 2 halves. So you have to make sure that when you're assembling the blaster, you make sure that you align everything really nicely, and then just start installing the screws, but don't tighten them all the way in. Just use them as really like your guides to align everything together, and then slowly after that, one by one, tighten it down. So that's my advice to anyone who is disassembling and reassembling your Swin variant. Next thing I want to talk about is the finishing of this blaster, and the orange part, this part up here, is really nicely anodized. I think this is some form of powder coating, but I'm just going to say that it is hard anodized, and this is in orange. There are a couple of other colors. I think there were red, pink, blue, and gray, but I think the orange color is the coolest color out of all. It just pops really well. But I can't say the same for the finishing on the black parts. That is the pump and the Magwell and grip area. You could still see the machine lines, so I don't know if it is, you know, bad anodizing or slipshod anodizing, but yeah, you know, this could have been finished better. I mean, I'm quite a fan of machine lines, only if the machine lines are done well, and only if the machine lines create a nice repeating pattern. But this here, yeah, it's kind of hectic. Like, you could literally see how the machine just went, you know. Yeah, so yeah, that's one thing that it's really just a personal opinion. I mean, if you kind of glance at it, it looks quite cool, but if you look at it and you look at the pattern, then yeah, No man, no. And then of course, yeah, let's talk about the anodizing on the plunger tube as well as the buffer tube. They are the same, and then the anodizing on the barrel seems to mirror the same sort of anodization that is done on the buffer tube as well as the plunger tube, just that it is in a different color. This is, like I said, in the champagne color. Next, let's talk about the scar barrel. This is my first time seeing an 11 string scar barrel. Yeah, let's talk about FPS now. Let's jump into the FPS, then we talk about the scar. Sorry guys, I went ahead and talked about the aesthetics and everything, and then I didn't even talk to you guys about the FPS, even though I went for the firing demonstration already. Sorry guys, like I said, I'm really tired, but yeah, you know, please bear with me. Okay, so as I was saying guys, FPS, okay, FPS. So I took a bunch of FPS readings, all with different variants in the spring tension. So that's one set of readings with just the spring, without any spaces and without the scar barrel. Then one more set of readings with the spring and one spacer without the scar barrel. And finally, the spring with two spacers with and without the scar barrel. And for each set of readings, I took a total of 10 shots, all using fresh AF Pro darts. Once again, shout out to Vince for the darts. Thank you. So I will put the readings on screen so that you guys can take a look. And just by looking at the average readings, I can kind of assume, I guess, that each spacer gives you an increase of roughly about 20 to 30 FPS. And then by including the scar barrel, it reduces that by roughly about 10 FPS. Now back to the 11 string scar barrel. Like I mentioned, this is my first time using an 11 string scar barrel, and I would have loved to give you guys an accuracy firing demonstration, but the area that I'm at is just not conducive for accuracy tests. So yeah, just take my word for it, I guess. I am quite impressed with how the 11 string scar provides pretty good accuracy without actually reducing too much FPS. That, in my opinion, is a pretty good trade-off. 10 FPS for a lot more accuracy, I think that's actually pretty good. And the reason why I took FPS readings with the scar barrel using the two spaces in the spring setup is because generally when you're running this at a lower FPS, you don't actually need that much accuracy. That is generally the basic rule of thumb here, right? So yeah, I went for the highest or the strongest spring load by adding both spaces, and then I used the scar barrel to kind of even things out. And I like the performance out of this. Now overall, that you guys saw, the performance of this without the scar barrel on the strongest spring setting is averaging very close to 130 FPS, which, like I said all the way back at the start of the video, is very much like the performance of an expanded plunger tube retaliator. And then when you add the scar barrel, it goes to about 120 FPS, which is not bad, not that great, but very accurate. So all in all guys, all in all, I've went through everything. I've said all the gripes about this, the plus points and all that. I think this is a really well made blaster. This thing is super solid. I wish it was mine. I am able to give you guys a very objective review simply because Enoch sent this to me. Once again, Enoch, thank you so much. I really appreciate you granting me this opportunity to take a look, try out, and even review the Swin V. But this is a blaster that is way out of my budget, something that I don't think I can afford. I don't know if I'll be comfortable to spend that amount of money on a blaster like this, but I have to say that it's really well made, even though it is not perfect. For the price point of 1200 Singapore dollars, I'm expecting perfection or close to perfection. And there are some, unfortunately, there are some parts that I really think it's not really worth that price point. The finishing is one of those. The fact that there are no, structural mating points in the two halves of the shell, and the alignment of this, yeah, the alignment of the buffer tube is really the biggest gripe, I think, in my opinion, because yeah, I'm expecting at least that, right, to be lined up perfectly. So yeah, if you're looking for a really sturdy, really solid blaster, I don't think this thing is gonna break anytime soon, and you don't need that much of a performance, then yeah, consider this if that's in your price range, because this thing, an expanded plunger tube retaliator, 120 FPS with a very accurate scar, in my opinion, pretty darn solid. Now, I have to say I would have liked to try to push this even further, but I was never able to find a suitable spring to go in here. So I don't know. I don't even know the actual load of this spring right now. I can only assume it is about 8 to 12 kilograms, just going by pure estimation here. I believe that this could handle a spring load of about 18 to 20 kilograms, because yeah, this thing is really sturdy. I like the way it is made. I think that this can be pushed even further. I don't actually see any failure points in terms of the shell and the internal parts, right? So I think this can be pushed pretty far. I think hitting the 150 to 160 FPS point would be the sweet spot for this blaster. But yeah, I think if that's the case, what would be needed is an upgrade to the pump grip here, because like I said, this pump grip is great and it's fine in this particular spring load. But if you're going for a higher spring load, I think you would at least need some rails here so that you can attach a vertical grip, because with the way it is right now, it's really comfortable, but I don't think that it would be comfortable on a heavier spring load. That's my opinion. Oh, there was one thing that I forgot to mention to you guys. That is the way the catch and the trigger are made. I realized that the catch and the trigger don't actually have a post or a guide for the spring. That's kind of strange because, you know, there is a slot there where you know clearly it's for you to put the spring, the trigger spring and the catch spring respectively, but there are no guides. There's no, like, there isn't a post where you can kind of rest your spring on, and that is a little bit strange. I don't know if that was done deliberately, like for example cost savings or something, but you know, yeah, especially for the catch spring, that was quite a chore to align and hold it there. You know, just something that I wanted to point out. And that is it. I don't believe I've missed out on anything. If I did, then yeah, I'll just put something on screen, but I believe I've covered everything that I wanted to, the good and the bad, the pros and the cons about the Swin V. All in all, I think it's a really, really good blaster, but at that price point, I'm expecting perfection. This has some flaws that, yeah, it makes it a little bit difficult to justify that price point. It's fun to use, but yeah, it is a very, very high-end expanded plunger tube retaliator. And that's it. We've come to the end of the video. Thank you for watching all the way throughout. I hope that you enjoyed it. Once again, a shout out to Enoch for putting this in my hands. It's such an honor to try out the Swin V. Yep, I think it's a job well done, but it could have been better. Alright, nothing much else to say, guys. I'm really tired. I should just pack up and go to sleep. I really need some rest. But thanks for watching anyway. And yeah, I do apologize for not, you know, putting out the other videos that I promised earlier. I've just been so busy, and you know, this was loaned to me, so it's a limited time. I don't want to take too long. I've already held it for a little longer than I should, so I really apologize, Enoch. I'm so sorry. But yeah, yeah, I think I'll stop rambling now, guys. It's late. Drills pay the bills, and teamwork makes the dream work. Peace.